Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Rock Roll podcast. Check out this record. This is the show where we educate you out there on the bands you should give a listen to. And this episode is the epitome of that sentiment. My name is Frank. With me is the man, the myth, the legend, and almost 40-year-old Mark.
Actually, Frank, it's I'm the man, the myth, the meatball. Almost 40-year-old Mark.
Sally.
Thank you.
You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music Podcasts, and you can see these fabulous mugs on YouTube.
But when you ask, great question. Thanks for asking. New episodes drop each and every Friday-ish.
That's right. If you're hearing this for the first time, welcome. Review records, and we rip the shit out of crap bands like Bon Jovi and U2. Then we have lots of musical discussions. We do spotlight series and even look into some rock and roll mysteries.
Okay, so you definitely want to check out our verse series where Frank and I will duke it out on behalf of two bands in the name of what we like to call total stereo domination, man.
And while you're at it, be sure to check us out on Instagram, Facebook group. Hopefully these episodes will leave you wanting more of our musical goodness. And if you have a record you want us to check out, drop us a line wherever you find us. So Mark, listen, I can't contain myself any longer.
Okay.
And I'm so excited for this episode. When
Let
we
it
did
out, buddy.
Our episode almost a year ago on Jason and the Scorchers, that was in last June, I went full deep dive into cowpunk and related bands. One playlist led me to a band never heard of before called Thin White Rope. And I just think they may be the best band that anyone's ever heard of, Mark. I was in your ear about them for quite aggressively too for a while, and now we've been able to dedicate time and an episode to them. I think you're just as interested in them as I am. What would you say?
Oh, totally. I'm totally into them. Yeah, bands like Thin White Rope are why we do this podcast. Don't get me wrong. I love to take a hot, steamy shit on Greta Van Fleet. But what I really love is finding new music that positively changes how I feel about rock and roll, course of my life, because it's just such an integral part of who I am that these new discoveries are so fantastic.
Oh yeah.
This was one of those recommendations where you and I both ended up checking out the entire discography of a band and couldn't believe we just simply hadn't heard of the band until quite recently. It's amazing.
It's unbelievable. So who exactly is this mysterious band named Thin White Rope?
Tell me.
All right, here we are, right? So there isn't a lot of information about them, so I will do my best here. The band was formed in 1984-ish by vocalist guitarist Guy Kaiser and guitarist Roger Kunkel. There were some lineup changes, and they would settle on Steve Tesluk on the bass and Frank French on drums.
Good name.
The band name came from the William S. Burroughs description of human semen in the novel called Naked Lunch. Being from the desert, of course, they are associated with desert rock and Paisley Underground, but there's so much more to them. In an interview with guitarist Roger Kunkel from a few years back, he said they were once referred to as a mix of Johnny Cash and Sabbath. So, Mark, here we go. A, what do you think about the band name? B, what do you think about the Cash meets Sabbath? And C, genre game time. How would you even describe this band?
Oh man, that's a lot to unpack right there. So as far as the band name, knowing its origin is a bit gross, right? But since the music doesn't really reflect the meaning of the name, it's easily overlooked. It'd be one thing if they sang a bunch of songs about ejaculating, right? But because that doesn't happen, or if they're doing it in such a veiled way that you can't tell, I don't really give a shit. As for the Johnny Cash meets Black Sabbath statement, I think I get why someone might say that. There's that brutal, honest feel that Cash was known for, and each of the albums certainly has its own kind of dark atmosphere, as many Black Sabbath albums do. Excuse me. I don't know that I would have made the same comparison on my own, but like I said, I can see where it works, right? As far as the genre game time, it's always tricky, right?
Always.
In the mid to late 80s, there was such an interesting time for music exploration, and Thin White Rope were definitely pulling a lot of inspiration, a lot of influences into the dark unknown and stylings. So there's an aspect of cowpunk, and I get why Jason and the Scorchers would have led you to them.
Sure.
But there is also a great deal of desert and garage rock and what would turn into the sound of the 90s indie and grunge scenes. However, there is a hint of new wave and 80s pop in there too. Add to that what we now call the alt country sound, well before it was anything near the mainstream ideal that it is now. All that while having Dylan-esque lyricism about them. Pinning a genre on these guys is going to be really hard. So make up the best answer out of the description I just gave, as you feel inclined. Back to you, Frank.
Well, you bring up a good point too with the sound of the Indian grunge scenes. I mean, this is well before that. So did we stumble upon something here?
Some super proto,
right, that may have indirectly been an influence here. I think we may have. In 1985, Mark, the band released their debut, Exploring the Access. By this time, Joseph Becker would join the band on drums. We get tracks like Down in the Desert, Lithium, not the Nirvana Lithium, Dead Grandmas on a Train, 11, and even more that show really the band's cryptic lyrical chops and fuzz guitars mixed with country and some blues. Now these songs, they're not for everyone, and I say that because they're super heavy, not musically but in content, and there's a weight that comes with them, and they're really even challenging in structure. Mark, is that fair to say that they're not for everyone and not everyone's going to get this band? And of course, are you impressed by this debut record?
I think that's totally fair to say. The debut is really interesting. The songwriting is really strong, and musically the band is just really tight, which is interesting because they just added that drummer, right?
Yeah.
You don't always expect this level of craftsmanship out of a debut album from a band that lived in the shadows for the last 30 years. But it's so cool to see that they planted a seed in 1984 when this album came out.
85, yeah.
85, excuse me. And that it just blossoms through. You can see that it really is the roots of this band.
Yeah, again, the fact that an album like this exists in 85, before everything were to be happening in the later part of that decade, it's pretty impressive. February of 87, the band released the second album, which we're going to be talking about, Moonhead. Kaiser, Kunkel, Tesluk, and Becker are the four delivering this marching and just dark sound. The cover of the album, let's talk about that, is a simple yet ominous and mystifying painting of a guy in a suit with the moon to his right. And if you're like us, you're curious as to how this could possibly sound. Mark, your thoughts on the cover, and is Moonhead just what it is, which is by definition a follower of the moon?
The cover gives away nothing, absolutely nothing about the album. It's a quirky painting of the titular Moonhead, assuming he is the titular Moonhead and the moon. I just assumed based on the cover that they call him Moonhead because his head is as big as the moon.
Right.
But who knows? Maybe it's as lumpy as the moon too.
There you go. Right. Well, when you pop open the cap, this is what we get. Track one, Not Your Fault. You get drums, march, and a fuzz-filled intro with the desert colliding basically with rock and roll. Kaiser's lyrics are minimal in length, and he's making up. He's really making good use, I should say, of his real estate, which makes lyrics like what I'm about to read come to life, and his vocals are just slicing through your piece of steak, basically. So here are some lyrics. The more you see, the less of you is likely to emerge from whatever hole you hide, and while your pants are being searched, it's not your fault. It's no fault at all. She only wants you to join her fall. It isn't that she hated you because she thought you were Mormon pure, but you should see she doesn't like you, and it's nothing drugs would cure. Mark, you digging this?
From those drums as they come just pounding in, Frank, I really dig this track. Those gorgeously dark and mysterious lyrics, the dirty and fuzzy guitars. I love the way Not Your Fault just takes its time to unravel. Really cool track.
Yeah. First track, and then how amazing the second track is this song, Wire Animals, which is the first song I heard of. from that playlist I was referring to earlier, and I was hooked. I became instantly hypnotized by the riff that carries during the verse, with the second guitar really just not giving us a strummed chord. It's really doing some intricate stuff on its own too. They're really making sure that they complement one another. What I could tell is there's some isolation and depression going on here lyrically. It says you're not alone, you are not free. Could be in response to maybe the failed relationship, and not your fault if we are to piece this together. Regardless, listen, if it's true or not, this is a badass song. Mark, your thoughts here.
And the snake says, you are alone, but you are not
Oh,
free. Holy crap, dude. Pair that with those like twanging chords and everything going on. Wow, just a killer track, Frank. I see how this would have hooked you in.
yeah, totally
Yeah.
did. If you had the vinyl, track 3 is actually Take It Home, but we're going to go from the Spotify playlist. And the third track is actually Thing. And this is a very delicate and exposed number with Kaiser just on the acoustic. This is the only time in the early part of the catalog where the acoustic appears. In the album Sackful of Silver later on, we will see it more. But in the midst of this smoky desert, we get like simple chords, but the focus is how the gruff vocals of Kaiser get sincere. And my focus was on that plus the lyrics. Mark, are you digging this thing?
This thing I dig for sure, Frankie. I got that kind of campfire cowboy blues feeling, and I'm always down for a hit of that thing, if you know what I mean.
I sure do.
Ooh,
So here we go. Moonhead, the title track, and maybe one of my faves, especially to listen to at night. So what is a moonhead? Again, a person fascinated with the moon, or a person, Mark, as you were saying, with a big forehead shaped like the moon. Listen, if you're a guitar player, this intro and song in general is for you. It starts off slow with the bass, and you get this gradual buildup with the guitars and drums, and then it gets silent, and then you're treated with these lyrics. Moonhead said, I'd never get away. Moonhead said, I lived for yesterday. Moonhead said, I've never asked him why. Moonhead said, my girl was going to die. And then it says, I'm going to kill Moonhead tonight. All right. I'm going to kill Moonhead tonight. Is he the Moonhead he speaks of? And has his depression dug him in such a hole that he's wanting to die? Again, I'm just trying to cut through these cryptic lyrics. I really can't stress what an amazing tune this is in words. The outro of the song is just as impressive as the intro. And I wish I could see a live performance of this, Mark.
I'd be right next to you at that show for sure, Frankie.
Yes.
The intro to Moonhead has such a classic 80s pop feel to it. But to your point, Frank, who the fuck is Moonhead and what the fuck is going on in this song? I hadn't considered that he himself was Moonhead, which only serves to thicken the mystery of the meaning to the song and to the whole album and even the band, right? It's just so cool.
Yes, absolutely. The next track we get is Wet Heart. So not a black heart or a broken heart, a wet heart. This puts the gaze into shoegaze, if you ask me, and it adds just another mystery of what on earth Kaiser is singing about. I mean, this is 87, and I know lyrical content was improving with each year for songwriters, and I'm sure if more knew about this band, they would have had him up there as far as being a premier lyrical songwriter. Mark, how is your wet heart holding up during all this right now?
Well, Frank, I too do not like to compare scars. There's a line from the song. That said,
yes,
I'm doing great, man. Wet Heart is such a cool track. I love those moody down tempo tracks. The drums move forward while the guitars feel like they're stuck in place, just being pulled forward by the drums slowly.
Ooh.
And you can't help but be hypnotized by it all. I love it.
Yeah. Next track is Mother, a nice little post-hardcore bass grooving intro. The band is so tight here, and the chorus just screams with a melody that most voices like Kaiser really couldn't normally produce. And their songs actually don't have many choruses, so it was cool how this one does have one. Mark, how are you, my mother?
Well, son, it's been a rough couple of years since your sister. Wait a minute. Sorry about that. Not sure at all where I went there. Frank, these haunting backing vocals are just absolutely killer. I love that they give the bass the lead here. It's just such a great look at revisiting the haunts of one's roots and what it means to go back to those childhood places as an adult, and
Ooh.
like the trauma that like it induces, like that it brings you right back to. It's just really interesting look at it.
Yeah. Another one of my faves is Come Around. This song just fascinates me to no end. It's dirty cowpunk with lyrics that will keep you up all night. Before I get into some of those lyrics, the drums just pound away. And what's really innovative is that they do a little jazz drummed breakdown with dueling guitar licks. This creates to me almost a new song onto itself. Here are some of these lyrics that I just think are fantastic. It says, Dave, I saw your tiny fist around a leopard's tit. Jesus walked right by and you didn't give a shit. Andy killed an animal. He killed it with his hand and he gave it all to me because I was a woman then. Then the next set is I remember Clay was suffering from some disease. He picked it up in London in 1470s. God to laugh at Lloyd. He will deny to his death that he's the one who can never extract that pound of flesh. Mark, what incarnation is going on here?
Frank, who the fuck knows, man? If I'm trying to break this song down literally, I'd say the song is about how our lives intersect with each other and the inevitability that people will both come and go regardless of our actions. Beyond that, I think Kaiser just hit us with a lyrical wrecking ball to the brain, because this thing is like, I said it before, it's Dylan-esque. It's just of that caliber of like, yes, he's got a really simple rhyme scheme in there, but the context leading to those rhymes is college level. Mark could never enter this English class. Phenomenal.
And he does this interesting thing too, where Dead Grandma's on the Train from the first record, and even in Elsie Crashed the Party in the next record, he does this thing where he places you in the past, right?
Right.
And that to me is absolutely amazing, because we all know he wasn't living during those times, but yet he's literally placing you there and creating this whole kind of story around it.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? You reference back 1,000 years and the 1470s in the same time, like, so it's just amazing how he uses time and space,
yes,
just as though they don't matter.
Right, exactly.
But like, how could, like, because when you're rationalizing, you're thinking about these things, of course time and space matter. It's about context. You need time and space for context. So the fact that he completely disregards them just sends this to a whole other level.
Absolutely, yeah, and not many people could do that, and it's important to obviously talk about. Yeah, same here. Yeah, don't worry. Next track, If Those Tears. From one insanely well-written track to another, we get this one. The slurred lyrics really invoke such emotion that you've become 100% invested in this character. It's slow, it's steady, methodical, and absolutely gorgeous. Mark, I mean, what else can you say, man?
Dude, I feel like I've been drinking when I listen to this song. Just an intoxicating number that leaves you questioning everything you think you know about yourself or this character or some bizarre situation which you've found yourself in. Really cool, haunting, and unsettling number. I absolutely love it.
Well, and then here, like, again, here's the next one: Crawl, Piss, Freeze. I mean, you're welcome. This is the last song if you have the vinyl, and what a way to end it with this fuzzy death march. Whoever is the subject of these songs, I hope they never find out. That's all I got to say. Whatever occurred to breed such strong songs really make the entire early 2000s emo scene seem like a bunch of fifth graders got together and wrote songs in 2 minutes.
It kind of is what that
yeah, right. Because after you listen to this, which still invokes emotion, and then listen to that, you're like, come on, man, how can you even get involved in that? When I specifically talk about emotions in music, this is what I'm referring to: relating words such as crawl, piss, freeze to a person who maybe has mentally abused someone else. That's just brilliant to me. Mark, are you crawling your way to this song?
It's kind of wild how much post-hardcore is in this song rhythmically, which is especially wild because it was only starting on the other side of the country when this was released. To answer your question, Frank, I am absolutely crawling to this song. I love it as the closing song for the original release. It really fits the album so wonderfully in that it really is a bizarre little painting of its own making, just like the rest of it. It's just really so cool.
Really is. So we're gonna talk about the bonus tracks here, but they could also be found on the Bottom Feeders EP, which I know you ordered and I
All right.
have, and we're very happy about that. This is track 3, but it's the next one in line on the Spotify playlist. So Walking Up, a very chill down verses with loud choruses, a la Pixies, or maybe a la Thin White Rope. Mark, you walking up to this track here.
The Pixies and Thin White Rope were contemporary, so it's hard to say who influenced who, right?
Right.
But that's wild. But what's wild is that it really could go either way, and both answers feel right.
Yeah.
I have to say, I really like this sonic approach to the song about waking from a dream, balancing the idea of that the dreams are this soft, pleasant place, and being awake is this harsh reality that we all kind of dread.
Yeah.
Really cool track.
Well, another cool track coming up, Valley of the Bones. My main reasoning for purchasing Bottom Feeders was this tune. It spews of the West and gives us a visual environment for this alt country number. The vocals are not in the twang here, and in fact, there isn't any twang and there doesn't need to be when you're traveling to the Valley of the Bones. Mark, this song has to be up your valley, right?
Way up and down in my valley, Frank. I love the last few lines of this song. So please excuse me when I do them. If God don't help, I'll turn away. They say it's evil, but that's okay. Because I burned with love, and in return, I found it doesn't hurt to burn.
Yeah.
Hot damn, Frank, those are just some wild lyrics. And to just leave it there, right? For that to be the end of the song. It's just so cool.
Yeah.
It's just so cool.
Yeah. Put away your Wanted Dead or Alive by Bon Jovi and listen to Valley of the Bones, please. Oh, man. The next one is Atomic Imagery. This is actually originally on Exploding the Axis, which, as we mentioned earlier, is just another fantastic record. We get more of the goodies and what the band does. Great and meaningful verses with short and even more meaningful chorus. No bridges, just space for the band to jam. Mark, how is your Atomic Imagery holding up?
My Atomic Imagery is just all fired up, brother. It's a testament to the Thin White Rope. Their musicianship and creative lyrics blend so well together that it just makes me want to create. That's what I've loved about it. Like, I've been so inspired to be creative while listening to these. Really cool track, works well with this remastered version of Moonhead. For sure.
Yeah. The next one is Ain't That Lovin' You Baby. This is a Jimmy Reed cover, and this is how a cover should be. When you put all of your strength and talent into this and take a little piece of it with you to make it your own. It's a blues number, but Thin White Rope gives it their flair. Mark, are you digging this?
Oh, yeah. I mean, this is straight up country blues, rock and roll right here, Frankie. And I'm here for it. Makes me just tap my toes and think I should be drinking whiskey from the bottle, if you know what I mean.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Next, we get Take It Home, which is the last track. The extended version is clocking in over 6 minutes. It's another killer track with fuzzy riffs, stellar drums and bass, and rough vocals. I mean, it's all placed on this blank canvas for us, Mark. Do you want to take this record home yet?
It might not be a surprise to our listeners at this point, but I've already ordered it. Yes. And Axis and Bottom Feeders. I'll probably get the rest of the catalog at some point too. Back to the track. Excuse me. It really fits well as the closer here. I'm curious when I get the vinyl home if I wish it were the closer or if I'm going to like it in that third spot. It's going to be really interesting to see how the two, I guess you'd call them playlists of this album, play out. Regardless, it's a great track, and I can see where if it were the third track, how it would fit in the kind of this tragic love story kind of concept album, question mark?
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. Wow. Well, what a ride. And before we get into the final thoughts and of course rating, let's talk more about the band because they're such an interesting band. So the following year after Moonhead, we saw the album In the Spanish Cave, great album. In 1990, we see a Sack Full of Silver, which was their only major record label release. And then their final record in 91, the Ruby C. In an article from Tidal.com, guitarist Roger Kunkel provided some great insight to the band. Some of Kunkel's influences were on guitar, Chet Atkins, Zeppelin, which, listen, even though I rip their albums, I don't mind when people say from a guitarist standpoint that they're influenced by them. My beef has always been the pedestal that they get put on as a band overall. Deep Purple, Sabbath, Pistols, Clash, Ramones. Mark, do you think you hear a little bit of all of that into their music?
Frank, I don't know that I would have pulled any one of those bands out specifically and said they were an influence on any given song or part, because it sounds like they have so many influences across the sonic spectrum that it's hard to pinpoint any one influence. It's a wonderfully rare trait to find a band where you're not just holding them up against another band and saying, yeah, they're doing a variation on this or that, right? They really seem to stand on their own. So it's, and it's so interesting. You can have one perspective, I can have one perspective. These guys from way back in 1984 and on can have their interesting perspectives and what they got from other bands and how that affected the music they made. But like I said, just trying to guess what their influences would have been, I wouldn't have pulled any of these specifically out, and because it's such an interesting, unique sound that it's hard to do.
Right, absolutely. And in that article, when asked if the band had a play for their sound, Roger stated the following: Guy and I had the general idea that a lead rhythm guitar construct was kind of boring, and we would take a more orchestrated approach, having lots of intertwining lead lines. Guy was already playing with a pretty heavy fuzz sound, and he gave me an old Mastro fuzz he wasn't using, which is an effect in the pedal. It didn't produce the big muff sound, but he was able to find a big feedback sound with it. Guy went with a Marshall crunch and fuzz, and he went with a Fender clean sound. So they're really complementing each other sonically here with the guitars, and they both had the ability to go into controlled feedback as well. Together, this created the combination that we're hearing on the guitars, and it really came together on the Moonhead record. Mark, that intent right there makes me love them more. What about you?
I always love when people really put the thought and energy into finding and developing their sound rather than just trying to get lucky and sticking with one thing.
Yep.
Nothing about the music they make feels thrown together. While there are bands that can pull that style off of rock and roll, that can pull that style of rock and roll off, excuse me, when you're venturing into uncharted waters like Thin White Rope does, it's cool that they prepared for the voyage, if you know what I mean. They really thought about the direction and the sound that they wanted to go for. Just really cool.
Absolutely. Now, for the meat and potatoes, when asked about their major label stint, Kunkel stated that it was a bit of a scarlet letter. And of course, the label didn't want to do any promotion for the band. Roger would then say that the band really called it a day because the music business is corrupt, shocking, and you could be the best band in the world and still not make a living. While they were getting increasingly popular in Europe, nothing was happening in the U.S. Such a shame. So they decided to enter a new phase. And he also said, Guy's a different person now and really wants no part of the music. Which, listen, I mean, you're writing stuff like this, and it's really not leading you to these areas because of certain factors. I could see where you could get turned off on that. Absolutely. He's actually we found some leads. So he's part of the academic personnel for UC Davis Department of Plant Studies. And I found the video entitled Range Calibrations, where Guy and another gentleman, who I'm assuming is a colleague of his, are talking about formulations and plants and stuff like that. It's pretty mature, that he moved on to do this, but a bummer, Mark, right? Because we will never get to see them.
Total bummer that we don't get the chance to see them. Definitely one that we need to set the time machine for when we can, my man.
Yeah.
But not what's interesting to me, right, is that he's at a collegiate level doing, some sort of plant formation stuff, right? But when you think about his writing and how advanced it is, it's not surprising to me that he's got a brain that would equip him for high level thinking like that.
Yeah, totally.
Yep.
And again, being mature enough to be like, okay, having a self-realization of being like, all right, I may be putting all of my efforts into this right here, but it's not working out. So I'm going to go ahead and do this and get fulfilled in other ways.
Yeah.
They could have still been a band and just still we not be making it after it. So,
Yeah.
wow, just crazy. Mark, final thoughts on this record here.
Sure. Moonhead is one of the most wonderful mysteries I've ever engaged in. From top to bottom, the album keeps your body moving and your mind racing. The energy and flow of the album are superbly balanced. Its lyrics are perfectly cryptic and satisfyingly disorienting. Sonically, they turn the recording studio from the wandering night sky from the desert floor to the claustrophobic feeling of being trapped inside Guy's head right alongside him as you both go mad. I absolutely adore this album. 9 out of 10. Check out this record.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing too from that article, Kunkel said was they got so associated with the desert that people actually thought they legitimately lived in the desert, that they just went along with it. They're like, yeah, we live in the desert. I left this part blank for a while because I wanted to try to formulate myself to the best of my ability. So here goes. What makes this album and band so gratifying to me is because it gives me everything that I need in one shot. Basically, musically, we get the right amount of fuzz and desert, but not overly shoegaze. The cowpunk is present, and so is the regular punk, but it doesn't take over and reside them to a particular genre. The song arrangements will keep you guessing and rely on these strong and well constructed verses. Most of the tunes they lack a chorus and noticeable hooks. So what's left is the focus on the verse. So they know they got to make those really be spot on, and they do. Kaiser's lyrics are cryptic, and they take you to really a time beyond time where it's hard to place when these events occur unless he mentions the actual dates, like we talked about, Mark. It gives enough space musically to let go and have fun with these musical arrangements, allowing the instruments to intertwine and be layered on top of each other. Each song is like a new experience, and with each re-listen, I feel you pick up on new things, therefore evoking new emotions. Kaiser's lyrics are something I could only dream of writing, from the opening track to Wire Animals, Moonhead, Come Around, Wet Heart. The more and more of this album, it's all I could ever need, really, in one piece of vinyl. If you've never heard this band before, please do yourself a favor and check them out. This band is very special to me. I have no bones in my valley, Mark, saying they are one of my favorites, and as is this record. This gets a 10 out of 10 for me.
Wow.
Yeah, it's one of those perfect ones for sure. Oh man, Mark, that was so much fun. What do we have in store next week? Because I can't wait.
Absolutely. So I was thinking a little bit about the desert, as you might imagine. What's more classic desert than Queens of the Stone Age? But I realized I only know Songs for the Deaf, right? That album they did with Dave Grohl on drums.
Sure, yeah.
So I wanted to expand my horizons out of that. So together, my friend, we're going to take a look at 2005's Lullabies to Paralyze.
Ooh.
I want to see where they went from there, because I do know that album. I do know Songs for the Deaf pretty well. In fact, I have it on vinyl. So I'm curious to see what that next step was. I couldn't tell you why I stopped with that one record. Maybe it was just me fanboying over Dave Grohl. Maybe it was just I was satisfied with that and didn't really care to move on. I'm not sure. So you and I together are going to explore where they went. I believe it's their fifth album. Fourth or fifth album. See where they take that next sonic step to, from Songs of the Deaf into Lullabies to Paralyze.
Love it. Yeah, they're another one who I was talking to you. Hey, listen, I don't know if they would be existing if it wasn't for a band like Thin White Rope, and I think it's a perfect segue into it. I can't wait. And I was actually listening to the 2013 Like Clockwork the other day, and the song in particular, I Sat by the Ocean. I really do like that. But Mark, fantastic choice. I really think this is gonna be great, and I can't wait to talk about it. So cool, man. And hey, everyone, thank you for joining, and listen to like, subscribe, rate, review. And seriously, if you're into digging like we are and trying to find new bands to listen to, check these guys out. They're really, really impressive. And stay safe out there.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And thank you so much for making it to the end of another episode. Thank you for listening, because as I always say, it's just me and Frank talking with a couple intros and outros. Don't forget, if you've got a recommendation, drop us a comment wherever you find us. Frank and I would love to listen to the albums that you think we should check out. So please do that. Now, if you'd be so kind as to say it with me, oh my, oh hell yes, oh bye-bye.
There you go,
Frank,
Mark.
what are you boys listening to in there? Oh, what's all this noise?
I don't know.
I'm just in the desert, Mom.
I'm in the desert, Mom.
I'm in the
Don't come in
desert.
here. It's a real desert.
She might believe me.
She might.